Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of Chinstroker versus Punter. I'm Mike here in Wellington, New Zealand, and with me, as always, is Paul in Birmingham, England. How the heck are you doing, sir?
Marvellous. Cold, but, fine.
Summer is here, and the time is right for going dancing in the streets. Although, actually, it's quite a miserable day here in New Zealand. Yesterday was a lovely sunny one, but today, not so much. Good podcasting weather. I was actually, until I realised Paul and I have had an aborted attempt at recording this morning, that my Wi-Fi extender wasn't working. I was actually toying with the idea of recording in the garden this morning. I thought that could be quite nice because you can see from behind my back garden, you can see where they filmed the dead marshes in The Lord of the Rings. So I could have filmed from a Lord of the Rings shooting location. It's nicer than it sounds. It's not like a boggy kind of area. It's just it's actually
it's so a boggy area.
it's utterly, it's one of your more upper class marshes, I will have you know.
Lovely.
But no, it was so funny. Hannah and I were watching after we moved into the house that we're in at the moment. We moved into about 3 years ago, I think, and we just finished watching all the Lord of the Rings films, and I subjected Hannah to the bonus features on the DVDs, and there's one bit where they were talking about they go into huge, minute detail. They were talking about where they filmed for Dead Marshes, and they mentioned it was by this train station. And I'm like, that's the train station you can see, because if you look out of our back, we've got bay windows, it opens out into a school field, and on the other end of it is a train line. And I'm like, that's the train station there. And then we rewound and looked, and it was literally the end of our garden. It would have been quite nice to have a podcast from that filming location. But no, we are back. We are here to catch you up on what we have been watching. So with that in mind, Paul, what have you been watching since last we spake?
Well, I have been watching Welcome to Derry.
Okay, I've watched the first two of this.
Which is it? I've watched four. I think five have been out. And I'm thoroughly enjoying it so far.
Cool.
I was a fan of the original 90s sort of mini-series that they did with Tim Curry.
Yeah.
I wasn't so big on the modern movies.
And it's those ones that remakes. This is a prequel of, isn't it? Because, of course, in the original book and the 90s miniseries, it was set in the modern era, was set in the late 80s, and then their childhood was in the 50s. But then in the remakes, the modern era was now, and their childhood was the 80s. So this is a prequel to the 80s. So, of course, that makes it the 60s.
I think it's 63. I think.
62, 63.
This starts in. But what I find it interesting how they're opening out the sort of universe and the lore, which I mean, I don't really remember the book very well, to be quite honest. So I'm not sure how much of this is from the book and how much of it is new stuff.
Yeah, I mean, specifically all the stuff with the army and as well, and just the idea of it. And you know what, that reminds me a lot of Twin Peaks: The Return. When you had all this sort of Project Blue Booky stuff and all the stuff with the military, and the idea that this thing that we'd always thought of as being this very localized thing, because obviously the book is three things. And most of the adaptations have only done one or two of these things. A bit like Salem's Lot, we were talking about this the other week, it's the horror element, of course. And then you've got the childhood, the trauma element of it, the Stand By Me of it all. But then you've also got the weird town element of it, the idea that Derry itself is this strange thing. And this seems to be playing in all of those areas.
I can't remember which episode they introduced the idea in, but the idea that if you leave Derry, you forget Derry.
Yes,
that's in the book. Idea.
That's in the book, and that's in. I think that's actually in both of the film adaptations, and I think that's meant to be a metaphor in many ways for adulthood. The idea that there's a kind of wonder and a belief and an acceptance and a kind of
leaving your childhood behind.
Yeah, like a magic of childhood. Like people talk about how children are particularly susceptible to ghosts in the spirit world because of their openness. Then this idea that as the doors slowly close on all that stuff as we become adults.
And I can't work out. I'm presuming that the James Remar character, the colonel who was the young lad who had the sort of encounter in the woods when he was younger.
Mm.
I'm presuming that he wants the thing for a weapon
That would make sense.
because, but, but really the way he's reacting to it, it also might be that he just wants to kill it. And it's difficult to know which way that's going to go.
Yeah.
I also like the expansion of the character from The Shining.
Yes.
Seeing him using his shining to search for Pennywise.
And I think this idea as well,
Interesting idea.
there's always been an element of shared universe in the Stephen King books to an extent as well. And Derry,
Yeah.
it is. I mean, my feeling on this is interesting because I think that one of the things that I like about this is the period setting, because I think that I understand why in the recent film version they had it set now and then had the past being the 80s. That kind of makes sense on paper, but I think that there's such an intrinsic element of the book and its late 50s, early 60s settings and all of the things that were happening in America around race and class.
I mean, imagine in the series if, I mean, there's the moment where you probably haven't got to it yet, but there's a moment where the sort of the losers gang, the losers club,
yeah,
or the new ones anyway, because they kind of get rid of the first lineup pretty quickly, don't they? In the first episode,
yeah, that was pretty surprising. And those kids were on. The thing I thought was cool was those kids, the ones who all get offed in the first one, they were the kids on all the posters and all of the promotion for the show. So it was a real, so it was quite a clever little. It's like in the pilot episode of Buffy, when Xander's got a best friend, Jesse, I think his name is, and they put him on the opening credits just for the first episode.
He gets turned in the first episode.
Yeah, exactly. And the only reason, and they had to pay loads of money to the union to get him, because you're only meant to be on the opening credits if you're on the entire season, just so they could do that bait and switch. And I love that stuff.
Yeah, me too. But yeah, I'm also been surprised. Watching it, you often forget you're watching TV.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I know it's HBO and it's not sort of a network, so they've got different rules.
But it gets pretty freaky, doesn't it?
Shit. I mean, the first episode, I was not prepared for the demon baby birth in the car.
Yeah, and that's like the opening of the episode as well, isn't it? There's no messing around.
At all. But yeah, I'm enjoying the series. I think the third episode was probably the weaker one for me. And it's not a particularly bad episode, but they have a sequence where the kids are being chased through the graveyard by different spirits. And it looks very Frighteners. The whole scene looks like it could have been lifted from Frighteners, and it feels a little bit out of step with all the other horror elements. It feels like quite a broad, quite a light horror, sort of a PG-13 horror moment.
I mean, there are elements of that in it, because although in the recent movies and the book as well, there's some very, transgressive, graphic child murder and all these sort of things. There is a weird gee whiz innocence. That's one of the reasons why I say that I think that the recent films, the sort of duology that they did, really lost something by it not having that 50s, 60s setting, because I think there's something so specifically innocent about that kind of Americana. And the 80s was a little bit like that. The 80s was kind of the 50s take two in many ways. It was a very capitalistic, very, innocent. Like if you go back now and look at pop culture from the 80s, you want to kind of tap it on the head and say, "Oh, bless," So
I would say in that third episode, the reason they're in the graveyard is because they get a Kodak camera and they want to take pictures to show the police chief to get the kid's dad out of jail, who's been sort of a black guy who worked at the cinema. Yeah. And I was thinking that if it'd been in the modern movies, they could have all just used their mobile phones, but it wouldn't have made it quite as. There's a whole thing about how the kids don't know how to develop films, so they have to find like one of this smart kid.
But I do think though that even in the book, there was that slight Monster Squad Goonies element in there.
Yeah,
amongst all of the horror.
I think the idea. I think having it as a prequel works really, really well. And the sort of the kind of X-Files-esque storyline with the and I mean,
and that makes sense when you think about when it was set.
The fighter pilot who damaged his amygdala and doesn't feel fear. So he's the ideal guy to sort of, and he is. I'm also, my memory's terrible, but I'm recognizing the last names of lots of people in the town.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, he must be his granddad.
Yeah, you've got the grandfather of the boy who grows up to be the librarian, the only one who stays in the town in the original book, and remembers everything, calls them back.
Is the police chief must be the granddad of the bully?
Yeah. Who ends up in Juniper Hill, and that it's like the places as well, like the mental asylum, but I mean, what I thought about this, I've only watched the first 2 episodes, but I enjoyed this. I did like this, but I did have a couple of small issues with it, which are very just me issues. I think the one thing is there's a lot of. I think because of the period setting and because of the style of television now, there's obviously a lot of stagecraft use. There's a lot of those kind of environments, those kind of sunsetty environments where everything feels a little CG. And that gets me a little bit. Having said that, though, I think because this is set in the 60s and a lot of it is from the point of view of children, I think you can chalk some of that up to actually being stylistic choice as much as being a shortcoming. The other thing is as well is... And I shouldn't critique something because it wasn't for what it isn't, as opposed to what it is, because I think it's very well executed. But I was kind of hoping that it would be less of a straight horror and more of a weird town story, because originally it was just called Welcome to Derry, and they added the it to it because I bet some executive was just like, well, we need to brand this, and I feel like as crazy as it is, and as much as I enjoy the excesses, I would weirdly have probably enjoyed more of a slow burn, because one of the things about the book, particularly the Derry of it, is that the place is so interesting. The town of Derry is such an interesting place.
You do get, I mean, there is...
And maybe the show goes to that. I've only watched the first 2.
Well, I can understand. Yeah, I mean, they do start to explore the weirdness of the town more.
Yeah.
And you also get what's quite interesting. Is it Halloran?
Yeah.
A Halloran?
Yeah.
At one point
Hallahan.
Sorry,
or no. Is it O'Halloran? Anyway, yeah.
No, the guy from The Shine, the character from The Shine.
Oh yes, yeah. Who ends up being the sort of the caretaker.
Yeah, the psychic.
Yeah, he's also got the shinning.
Yeah, he's got the shinning. We don't want to get sued.
No, we don't.
So there's a point where he kind of does a mind meld almost with one of the local native kids who's keeping an eye on the army, and you get to see a flashback where it's explained through a retelling of a Native American legend where Pennywise comes from, how he was released into the woods, what keeps him in the woods, and a whole sort of historical backstory, sort of hundreds of years back in the past.
Yeah. That's cool. And the book touches on that, this idea of this elemental, this ancient, eternal evil that pops back up again every 30 years or whatever.
I think you can't do a story about Derry and have it as just a weird town.
No, not just a weird. I think I'm splitting hairs.
So much death and murder in that town, and so many missing children in that town that to kind of ignore that.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it. I think it's just. It was just that when I heard the title Welcome to Derry, I had an image of what the show was going to be. And when they changed it to Welcome to Derry, and I saw a trailer for it, I was like, oh, okay, well, this is a horror show. And that shouldn't come as a surprise, I mean, the book, I love the book, It's my favourite Stephen King novel. It's got everything that you need. And I've got I remember reading that for the first time on holiday, and I've got such a fond memory of it. I can remember the music I was listening to when at the time when I was reading it, and I've got this whole real sensory memory of that whole thing. And I also a big fan of Stephen King, and it does feel that in some ways Derry and It, along with The Dark Tower, are and The Shining are the kind of central canon of the Stephen King universe in a way. It feels that everything that connects up, it's the Kevin Bacon of the Stephen King universe, you know? And so I love the idea of a show that explores that. And I think the show looks great. I think the performances are great. And it does capture elements of the book that none of the adaptations have because of the time that it has to do that, the luxury of being a TV show, you know. And there's elements that I think that the original 1990 miniseries captured better than any of the other versions. There's elements that the more recent film versions captured better than any, and there's elements that this do as well. So I just feel like it's such a rich piece of source material to exploit, and I'm happy to spend time in that world, as weird as that might sound, because it's such a horrifying world, because I kind of know it so well. It's got lightsabers in it, and when it does go nuts, the horror elements work really well.
Yeah, I think that it's got quite a nice mix of all those things. But as you've only watched the first two, and they are a little bit more horror.
Well, they're designed to grab the audience, I guess, aren't they? And that's what most of the audience are expecting. So I get it.
Yeah, I mean, there are sort of obviously most of the horror, if not all of the horror, ostensibly happens to young characters in it, and the adults only ever get to see sort of the tail end, or they don't get to see the sort of, they're not being confronted by Pennywise. He goes after the kids.
Yeah, there's the kind of boy you cried werewolf element.
Yeah, and I mean, like the girl that's terrified of being sent to the asylum because she's been there before, and it's like the cure's worse than the disease, basically. There's elements introduced where it has lots of chances to kill these kids, but doesn't.
Yes.
And they start to work out that he's kind of softening them up with fear, so they taste nicer, basically, is the general idea behind it. That I think the fighter pilot's kid, who's like the brainy one of the group, sort of says that some predators tend to stalk their prey for longer than necessary because the hormones that prey animals produce makes them tastier.
Yeah, it's basically like veal, isn't it? Like that gamey kind of. And I think one of the things that's interesting about the book that isn't really in any of the film versions, it's slightly referenced, is that the book had an element almost of Ready Player One to it, because he appeared as whatever scared the kids. He appeared as characters from movies, like he appeared as the Michael Landon Wolfman from the Wolfman movie in like he appeared as like movie monsters as well at certain points. And from an obvious intellectual property reason, they've never really done that. There's a kind of a werewolfy guy, a nondescript generic, non-union equivalent werewolf in the 1990 Tommy Lee Wallace directed miniseries as well. But I think it's a rich universe. And it always cracks me up when people lose faith in their intellectual property and add, like originally, like I say, this was called Welcome to Derry, and they changed it to It. And the next film I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but I think you're overestimating the general public. I think that
I understand completely why they did it.
Hardcore horror fans, most people would not have tuned into this unless they put It
and a red balloon. Then you've got the audience. I get that, but it is. I mean, I'll jump on to talking about something I watched now, because there's a weird connection here. This is a film that had a title change.
Why is there a?
It's a weird thing on Zoom now. If you put your hand up, hang on, lower hand.
It doesn't do it. Doesn't do it on mine.
Yeah, it's my settings. It's so I can say I want to talk if I'm in a meeting. Oh no, hang on. Do it again. Put it up and keep it there a second. I noticed something weird happening. No, it's not working. I just wanted to see if you'd do that. Hey, yeah, that's the emoji you need.
Yeah.
No, but the next thing, I had a rare trip to the cinema recently, and I watched a similarly retitled film that was originally called Deliver Me From Nowhere, and then was retitled Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere. This is what people are calling the Springsteen biopic, but it isn't.
Oh, that's what that film's about.
What you were saying about the stupid general, but no. People are calling this a Springsteen biopic, and it isn't at all. It's kind of like, did you ever watch the Aaron Sorkin, Michael Fassbender, Steve Jobs movie?
No.
Okay, well, I mean, this for people in the audience who have, this does the same thing where it isn't a biopic, but what it does is it takes an extremely specific period of somebody's life and concentrates in on that. So it's a biopic in the way that it's about Bruce Springsteen. You've got an actor playing Bruce Springsteen,
but it's a slice of life, yes, rather than,
it's like a sort of 6-month period where some specific things happened. And this is directed by Scott Cooper, who directed Crazy Heart, really good director, and starring Jeremy Allen White. And a whole bunch of other people. And what this is about Springsteen right just before he became really famous. He released an album called The River, and that had the song Hungry Heart on it, which was kind of a hit single. But the record company knew that his next record was going to be huge. He was basically on the precipice of fame. And he'd started recording the album, and that album would be born in the USA. So this record company were hearing these songs. They were hearing Dancing in the Dark, I'm on Fire, Born in the USA, and they were like, wow, this is going to be a big album. And when it came out, it was the biggest album in Columbia Records history. So they knew what they had. And then halfway through the recording, Springsteen junked the album and said, hey, I've recorded these 10 songs in my bedroom, basically, acoustically. And they were really dark songs. A lot of them were based on the film Badlands, the Terrence Malick, Martin Sheen film. And they were basically they were like murder ballads. They were a song about serial killers. So he came to the record company and was like, no, I don't want to release Star Wars. I want to release The Contrabulous Fabulous. You know, it was one of those kind of like, you know. And he recorded these demos, and he's like, I want this to be my next album. So he put the Born in the USA album on the side. They didn't release it at that time. And he went into the studio with his band and was trying to record all of these songs to be an album, and it just wasn't working. And then he came to the realization, I'm just going to put the demos out as the album. And the record company were like, no, you can't do that. It sounds like crap. It's really raw. The songs are completely uncommercial. And he's like, no, this is what I want to do. I want this to be the record. So there's that. And then the other storyline that's running adjacent to that is Springsteen was, without being diagnosed, was basically experiencing extreme depression. He's had that his entire life, but this was the early 80s, and, you know, come on, toughen up, dude. You know, it was that kind of world. And the album was coming out of that depression. He didn't realize that at the time. A lot of this is retroactive. And a lot of that was to do with a semi-abusive relationship that he had with his father, who's played by Stephen Graham. It cuts between his childhood and his experiences with his father and the present day of him recording this album, trying to get it released, and the fights with the record company, and him reconciling the mental health stuff. So basically, it's an indie movie. It's a very dour, quiet. It is not Bohemian Rhapsody. There's no big punch the air kind of.
Yeah, I saw the trailer, and it's not my sort of.
No, fair enough. And so it's not your traditional kind of walk hard, walk the line.
You don't want none of this.
Yeah. It's like, hang on, son. Bruce Springsteen's just quickly thinking about his entire life before he performs this song. There's no kind of punch the air, yay moment at the end. It's a really quite dark, introspective film. I mean, in many ways, it's very tonally similar to Badlands by Terrence Malick, which influenced this film. And I really liked it. I mean, obviously, it was catnip to me. I don't know how well it would play for people who weren't fans. That's one thing. I think for some people it would, but for others it wouldn't. I don't think you have to be into the music. And it kind of, in a way, made me proud to be a Springsteen fan, because this was endorsed by Springsteen after the fact. They started making the movie, and then halfway through the production, he was like, right, okay, I'm going to go and see what this is all about, because he'd obviously licensed the music for it. And then he started to endorse it. He helped them promote the film and did all that kind of stuff, but he wasn't involved in like the making of the movie. And I'm glad that this artist, who I like and admire and have done my entire life, his biopic film, whether you like it or not, is doing something interesting and isn't just everything was crap and then he released Born in the USA, did a massive gig, and it was like the end of Rocky, you know, that sort of thing. And the mental health elements to it and the relationship with his dad and how that feeds into the music is really subtle. You know, it's not kind of like, I'm all right now because I wrote an album. You know, it's not as simple as that, and it's much more ambiguous.
It's massively important for someone as famous as Bruce Springsteen to be okay with that stuff being in a film, though.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But he's been always been very open and honest. I mean, he released his autobiography. Really, it was super raw, and he always talks about this thing. He always talks about being a fraud, and how he's a fraud, and how it's a magic trick. You know, he's like, my songs are about the working class, but I'm a millionaire, you know, and he's struggled with reconciling. He comes from very poor working class background, but he's been rich since he was 30, and he's nearly 80 now. So for most of his life, he's been really rich and famous. And, you know, he talks a lot about struggling with the hypocrisy of that and doesn't shy away from that, you know. And I think because his music is very much about, you know, internal life, you kind of have to. And the film doesn't make him out to be a great guy, you know, like just, you know, walks out on women because he just doesn't have the emotional strength to deal with it. And there's no happy ending there. And, you know, the characters say to him, you know, like the lead romantic interest at the end, her final words to him are like, you need to get your shit together, mate, because you're leaving, you know, like she's got a kid, you know, she's like, you're leaving lots of human collateral damage in your wake, you know. And I admire that. I admire the fact that the film's like, look, this guy's human. You know, people think of Saint Bruce because, you know, he's kind of sending his love down the well, you know, that kind of, you know, element, the angel pop star. But I like the fact that, you know, he's endorsed a film which makes him look like a human being, you know, because we all do shit things. And the film is kind of like, well, why do we do shit things? It's not to excuse it, but it's an examination of that stuff. And it's really interesting. And I just like the fact that the Springsteen biopic concentrates on his least successful album. You know, there's only songs from that album on the soundtrack, and nobody knows them. You know, there's no Hungry Heart or you know, Dancing in the Dark in this film. It's lots of dark.
The performances
really great. I mean, what I like about Jeremy Allen White is he doesn't try to act like Springsteen at all. He inhabits the character. He kind of walks like him. He's got the same sort of vibe. But they don't try and make him look like him, you know. But you just kind of get used to it. It's a little bit like Chris Pine's Captain Kirk kind of thing. He kind of embodies the character, but he's not trying to talk like Shatner, you know. And Jeremy Allen White does all the singing in the film. You know, you can tell it's not Springsteen, but he sounds enough like him that he kind of conveys what he's like. And it's kind of an examination of male friendship as well. That's the other thing, because there's this idea that particularly in the 80s, you know, it's that whole, even now, it's kind of like, whenever men kind of express any kind of, you know, care for each other. And the film kind of looks into that a little bit, the complexity of macho relationships. And, you know, like his dad in the film isn't abusive in the way that people would have thought of in the 70s or 80s, or probably wouldn't even have thought of 10 years ago. You know, it's not like sexual abuse, or he's not violent, but he's just very emotionally distant and disappointed that his son isn't athletic, and the film's kind of about what that does to you. But at the same time, he reconciles with his dad in the film, and it's a really quiet kind of scene, you know, like his dad just says to him, and I know this is a true story because I've heard Springsteen tell it before, but right at the end of the film, he's just put the album out and he's touring and everything's great, and his dad just says to him, you know, since you've become successful, you've been really good to us. You know, you've been really good to your mum and your dad, to me and your mum. He's like, and I wasn't always good to you. And that's it. He doesn't apologize or says that he loves him or anything like that. But for somebody like that from that generation, that's a lot.
To acknowledge it.
You know, so just to say, you know, I wasn't always as hooked to you as I could have been. And, and that's the end of the film. And it isn't this big swelling moment. It's really small, but you feel it. You feel the truth of that. And I really enjoyed this. The only thing that I would literally knock it down a point for is there's one completely, like, bafflingly pointless subplot where Springsteen's best friend in the film is his manager, this guy John Landau, and he's the guy who's kind of fighting to get the record company to agree to put this record out the way he's recorded it. And it's a really important relationship, but there's loads of scenes of his manager at home with his wife, just telling his wife what just happened in the film. He's just like, yeah, so Bruce is really, struggling. He really wants to get this album out. He's like explaining the film to the audience, which is weird because the film credits the audience with intelligence for the rest of it. And I'm like, was that like a studio mandated thing? And his wife doesn't even speak. She's just like,
Yeah,
and it's like,
you never know with stuff like that, do you? Where it's
so
come
weird.
from.
But aside from and that really kind of was just like a ooh, okay. But aside from that, it's really good. But it's a cautious recommend because I think you've either got to enjoy films of this type, or at the very least have an interest in classic rock history, shall we say? But no, Springsteen, Deliver Me From Nowhere. Welcome to Derry. I really enjoyed it. What else you got, Paul?
Springsteen, Welcome to Derry. I'm really enjoying
it. It's Deliver Me From Nowhere. Actually, that sounds pretty good.
That works.
Yeah. I was just going to mention as well. Sorry, but before I finish this, on a connected note, I also watched the new Spinal Tap. Oh, the hand things come up. I didn't mean to do that. It saw me do it. I'll just leave it. I watched, and because I mentioned this because there's a Springsteen reference in it. I watched Spinal Tap 2 that's just come out. Now, it's crap, and it's one of those too late sequels like Anchorman or Zoolander 2. But what I will say is it's got my favourite joke of any film this year in it. And you know those jokes that you only find funny because they're so crap, and then you become amused at the fact that you're amused at the joke because it's that crap and that makes you laugh more? There's a bit where it's so dumb. It's not funny, but I just find the fact that I find it funny. There's a bit where the lead character's talking about how he's written his memoirs. And he's like, I got the idea from Springsteen because he released his recently. It was a great read. I am Springsteen going on Spreventine, it's called. And it's so dumb, but like every couple of days I remember it and just chuckle to myself. I am Springsteen going on Spreventine.
That's pretty good.
He should have called his memoir that. All right, sorry, what else you got?
I watched Frankenstein.
The Del Toro
by Guillermo del Toro, starring Oscar Isaac and Christoph Waltz. And Mia Goth, the amusingly named Mia Goth.
Yeah. She's in a new Star Wars film.
Is she?
She's the villain. She's a kind of Darth Maul-y, red and black, tentacle-headed Sith woman.
Oh, that makes sense because she's an odd-looking lady.
Yeah, she's definitely got a unique energy. I'll say that.
Yeah. So I enjoyed it. I kind of thought, for some reason, from the trailer, I thought that this was going to be like a really faithful adaptation of the book. And quite quickly into the film, you realise it's not a faithful adaptation of the book. I think what he's done is honour the spirit of the book. But he's expanded some parts. He's changed some bits here and there. The Oscar Isaac's Victor Frankenstein character, you get lots of stuff as him as a child with his abusive father, who's played by Charles Dance, or Charles Dance, depending on whatever floats your boat.
Yes, however you choose to live your life.
So, and it very much sells the horror aspect of the film is very much Victor Frankenstein and the way he the way he deals with human beings and death.
Well, it's a
And
little bit like the Hammer films. In the Hammer films, the villain was very much, oh, what's his name? Old Moff Tarkin.
oh yeah, Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing. Peter Cushing was very much the villain in those films.
Yeah, and as he is in the book, really.
Mm.
But in this, in the book, I believe it says that he had quite an idyllic childhood. So the abusive father angle. And he was abusive, like physically, but in a very Victorian way, in a very sort of a cane across the back of your hands for getting something wrong in your lessons kind of abuse, but also in a sort of you've got to be more of a man. He wasn't happy with, like you were saying with
Yeah,
Springsteen,
yeah,
really.
it's very similar.
Very,
Yeah,
very much the psychological abuse more than anything else. And he he was kind of a bit too close to his young mother.
all right, okay,
In the
like
film,
that.
and then she dies in childbirth, and his father, who is a leading doctor and surgeon, is unable to save her, although he suspects that he just let her die because he wanted rid of her, basically. But she does give birth to a son who becomes the kind of apple in his eye of his eye, and Victor is the ignored one. And he confronts his father at some point about whether he let his mother die, and he denies it. He says, "But you can't, you can't fight death. If death wants to take you, that's it. It doesn't matter how good of a doctor you are." And that's the point where it's kind of like all the stuff written up to that point was to give Victor Frankenstein the reason to want
Yeah, to kind
to.
of fuel his hubris.
Yeah, and the the scenes where he's just, there's points where he goes down to the gallows and he's examining men's teeth and their backs and stuff before they're even hung, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll have that one." And that one, and it's some dark
Yeah,
shit, man.
they're standing there like, "Oh, cheers, mate."
And then when he creates the creature, he's instantly repulsed by it and starts to treat it how his father treated him.
Oh, so it's like a generational abuse metaphor.
It doesn't learn fast enough. It isn't good enough. It's not good looking enough. The only thing it's got, all it will say is his name. It won't say anything else. But it is super strong. And you're not what the film's very much Rashomon style. So you get an opening sequence set in the Antarctic where the monster has tracked him down over the poles, like in the book and in the De Niro. When the version with De Niro
many of the film adaptations keep that framing device of the ship in the ice.
And what you see a fight between him and some men who are trapped in the ice on the ship, and they repel the monster, and then they bring him aboard. And the first part of the film is him telling the tale of his life up to this point to the captain, and then when that point finishes, the monster enters again, and then he tells his story of his life up to this point. And then, this is so weird because the more I'm talking about it, the more I'm thinking this is so like that Springsteen film you've just talked about, because they then
Frankenstein, Deliver Me from Nowhere.
No, they reconcile the Isaac, the dad.
Is it after Frankenstein's monsters just done a gig? Because that'd be freaky.
Yeah. I am Frankenstein going on Schlankenstein.
Yeah. Has he just released an acoustic album that serves as an emotional epiphany?
He wouldn't need. He can plug his guitar into his neck. He'd be fine.
Yeah, and just rocks out. I'll tell you what, it's a good job we don't make films, isn't it, really? They'd be like, I don't remember Frankenstein's monster like shredding electric guitar at the end of the story.
Also,
let's kick some
some
ice.
reason, in the book, in the original book, the Mia Goth character is Victor's fiance, I believe.
That's correct, and it's their wedding night where the monster enacts his revenge.
Yeah. Well, in this, she is his younger brother's bride, and it's kind of hinted at the fact that there is a attraction between the two of them, but she is very much not a cheat, basically. And but her role in the film is expanded massively to the point where she's like an anti-war feminist, and she falls a little bit for the monster while she's trying to sort of help him. And there's a whole thing, the whole wedding night thing does play out in a similar way, except obviously it's not his wife, it's his brother's. I mean, I sound like I didn't enjoy this, but I did. It looks fantastic. Christoph Waltz is great in it. The horror elements are really good, but it is very much more of a melodrama than I expected the film to be. Yeah. It's also 2.5 hours long, which might put people off. But I think it's worth a watch. I think Jacob Elordi is good as the creature. Oscar Isaac's excellent, as is Christoph Waltz. I think the cast in general are really strong. And like I say, it's sumptuously filmed. Very much like a modern day Hammer movie. But suitably disturbing as well. I mean, there's some really nasty. I mean, you know the bit in the opening of the book where he is doing a demonstration in front of all the medical luminaries of the doctor world.
Yep.
And he's in the theatre, and he's got basically half a cadaver, like head, shoulders, midriff, 2 arms, and he's got it all hooked up to batteries. And when he hooks up the batteries, the thing lets out a breath, but it's kind of just an impaled sort of a top half. I mean, it's pretty grotesque stuff. Or maybe I'm just getting a weaker stomach after watching it. Welcome to Springsteen. So
no, I think there is something about the idea of post-mortem and cadavers, and there is just something weirdly relatable about that, because it's a hidden world. Like, you know, we know that there are funeral directors, we know that there are people whose job it is, you know, doctors, surgeons, but society, you know, thankfully keeps that kind of behind a curtain. So I think that there is just something a little bit tricky about all of that.
It is really the horror comes from the callousness in the way in which human beings are treated in this film, even though they may be criminals or whatever. I mean, and obviously some of these people aren't being hung because they're murderers. They're being hung for like being crappy poor things. Yeah,
mental health.
It's just the way it's almost like a meat market with the people, and then when
life
it's actually him carving bits up and throwing bits in the bin and carrying on with the rest of it, it's all pretty horrific.
All right,
but an entertaining watch nonetheless.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, I watched 2025's Tron Ares. This is the third film in the Tron series, directed by, hang on, let me have a look, jobber extraordinaire Joachim Ronning,
Jobber's right.
Yeah, you know, he directed one of the Pirates of the Caribbean sequels. He directed Maleficent. Yeah, I mean, a bit of one of those directors who's basically kind of like a traffic cop, to kind of keep the production going. Yeah, it was crap.
I mean, the trailers all look bleeding terrible.
Well, there's a good film in there. I gave this a very generous three
And it's
stars.
Jared Leto as
Yeah,
well, and I can't abide him.
yeah. I mean, it's interesting because the whole Tron series is an odd one. I talked about this not too long ago when I rewatched the first two. None of them are good films, but the first one made an impression. It's a nonsensical, quite boring film when you watch it now, but the visuals, the sound, the fact that it came out in, that great summer of '82 means
the
that
idea feels like it should be a 60s film, not
yeah,
an
like
80s film.
Fantastic Voyage or something. It's
yeah, but there's quite a lot of sort of introspection about identity. And
the thing about the first one is, I mean, it was a Disney film that was released during that weird time, where Disney were putting out films like The Black Hole and the Fox and the Hound, and they didn't quite know what they were doing. They made some interesting stuff. Something Wicked This Way Comes, that was another one. And Tron does have, it does have a cultural footprint because it was so different and so original with the visuals. That and The Last Starfighter are often held up as these very early attempts at computer-generated imagery in films. And the idea of it and the fact that it was connected to video games and the democratization of the home computer and all of these things means it will always have a place in people's hearts in the same way that Pac-Man does, and a lot of artifacts from that time. The sequel was, again, fine, but really bland, and did some interesting things with the visuals, had that great Daft Punk soundtrack. But this one definitely feels like the weakest of the three, because what this film I thought was going to do, and that I remember when it was first announced. When it was first announced, they said it was Independence Day, but Tron. The idea being that the Tron world invades our world. I love that idea. I love the idea of those weird smashy things with the legs and people zipping around Earth-based locations on light cycles, and that kind of high contrast, bright and dark, a neon aesthetic of Tron in the real world on some kind of international alien invasion level is a great idea, but that is not what this film is. This film is a bunch of unbelievable skin jobs. I mean, when Jared Leto's the most charismatic person in the film, you've got a problem, and he's terrible in this as well. But there's I'll send you a picture of them. The two leads, literally, if you typed into ChatGPT a definition of skin job and asked it to create an image, it would be these two. I can't even remember what they look like now. It was just like they were so. It was almost like deliberate, like it was like an experiment. Like, how can we actually make the most forgettable characters in film history? To the point where I can't remember their names. I can't remember what they would look like. I can't remember a single thing that they said or did in the film. I can remember the Jared Leto character purely because he's got all the cool Tron stuff on him. I can remember the villain because she has
the trailer reminded me of one of the Transformers films.
It's not, yeah.
Remember the one where they had like the intelligent metal that was making the drones, and when they showed the characters being kind of made out of the blocks and then falling apart like pixels, like a video game, basically.
Yes.
It just looked dumb as hell.
And so the elements of them being on Earth aren't really used that much. It feels weirdly localized. It's as though nobody actually notices it all happening. It's kind of just this odd thing. There are moments that work, like the woman who's the main villain who's chasing them down. It's a little bit like a Terminator. The idea that you've got this indestructible woman who's coming after them. Some elements of that storyline, there's a few moments in the film where I'm like, oh, okay, here we go. I'm feeling a bit of energy now. This is good, but it doesn't really last. The visuals are incredible. It looks great, of course, and there are moments that are set inside it. And there's a bit, and it's total member berries, where Jared Leto, who's a producer on this film, and his character gets to go into the old mainframe. So he's in the Tron world from the first movie. So the visuals look like that. And it does feel a little bit like Jared Leto was like, I want to be Tron. I'm going to make a Tron film, and it connects to the other ones. Like you know how in the second one it's Flynn's son, and he disappears at the end. And this film does that thing, but loads of films you do. You and I always use the Ridley Scott Robin Hood film with Russell Crowe as an example of this, where at the end of the film it's like, and then he went on to have these awesome adventures, and you're like, well, why didn't we watch that? And this does that, where at the end of it they're like, right, what we need to do is we need to find Flynn's son, and we need to do this, and this. And I'm like, well, that sounds like an interesting film. What was this dull as dishwater side quest nonsense that we've just watched with a couple of blinking skin jobs for 2 hours, just to get to the point where you're now saying you're going to make the film that we wanted to see? I
think that the reason they didn't do the kind of invasion of the mainframe into the real world idea.
I mean, they kind of did, but not really.
It sounds a little bit, or quite a lot, like Judgment Day from the Terminator series.
That's never stopped them before. I mean, it still knocks off 10 of the films.
I mean, this film was never going to be anything but terrible.
The only circumstances I would suggest watching this film is if you've got a new TV. But even then, I'd say watch the second one or watch Speed Racer. It's one of those
kind of video game.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
There were points in the thing where I was thinking I'd much rather be playing this than watching this. But the only elements of it that worked, that made me give it, like I say, a very generous 3 out of 5, were it's got a fantastic score by Nine Inch Nails, and if you watch elements of this film as a music video, it's a great. If you almost trick your brain into thinking that you're watching an extended Nine Inch Nails music video set in the Tron world, that they've put a little bit of story in, it almost works. But as a film, which is what this is, it just doesn't work. And like I say, some of the visuals work quite nicely. Obviously, a lot of it's set at nighttime, so you've got that high contrast. Although part of me would wonder what the Tron aesthetic would look like in the daytime in the real world, but I guess that'd be too hard to do. And the only other element that I enjoyed it on was there was a tiny little tremor of nostalgia because of its connections to the original Tron film, a film which I never really loved. The original Tron's one of those films like Goonies where I've got a little bit of nostalgia about it, but not a huge amount.
I saw a conspiracy theory that this film was only really made to advertise the new Tron ride.
I can believe it. I mean, it'll have killed. I'll tell you what, this will have killed the franchise. It was a massive flop. And also, it's another one after Morbius as well. How Jared Leto continues to get work, I just don't know. Has anybody ever gone to see a film because of Jared Leto, ever?
Why do they keep pursuing the Tron? I mean, it wasn't a very good film, and it didn't do very well. The original, the second one was weaker, and this one's even worse. Why do they keep?
It's a brand, but it's a brand that they should keep in video games, in VR, in theme parks. That's how people want to. It's a little bit like Avatar, but not as successful in the way that I think people like the world and people want to inhabit that. But that's it. People don't care about the characters. I mean, there aren't even really characters in the. I mean, when you watch the original Tron film, you're not rooting for anyone. It just sort of happens, and it's so odd. It's such an odd franchise. Nobody really wants it, but it's just. But at the same time, I'm part of the problem. If there's a fourth one, I'll probably watch it. I just don't learn. This could be the one. They can find. I think
you just described a really, really shit film that you gave 6 out of 10 to.
See, to me, 6 out of 10 is a low score. But anyway, one more thing from you, and then I've got to go and do some weeding in the garden. So take your time, mate. Exciting. Trust me.
Okay, so I've been watching Pluribus, which is Vince Gilligan's new show. I know you've been watching it as well.
Yeah, Vince Gilligan getting back to his. Yes, it's the Vince Gilligan getting back to his science fiction roots because obviously he started in the X-Files.
Roots.
Yeah.
The sort of this is a fascinating show. I mean, just from the opening credits, you could see it's kind of going to be about identity.
And what Vince Gilligan's great at the what would actually happen if this thing happened kind of science fiction.
Well, first of all, can I just say that I identify so much with Rhea Seehorn's
Yeah.
character
And
in
she
this
was great
show.
in she was the lead actress in Better Call Saul as well, the Vince Gilligan series
Yeah,
was. What an actress she is. It's bravura.
yeah, she's great, and the fact that you sort of have this kind of almost modern interpretation of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, except there is no fight back. There is no sort of there is no heroes coming in to save the
It's like
day. It's
happy
already
apathy.
over. And the fact that I mean there's that the I can't remember, it's the second episode where she meets with the other English speaking people that
Yeah.
are immune to the hive
Of
mind,
the other 10.
and nobody cares, and she doesn't really get why nobody cares but her, because they've all got, now she hasn't got her wife, they've all still got someone,
Well,
and
it's like this the
she,
fact that we live in a world where we have all willingly surrendered our privacy. That's where we are in the real world, and we're fine with that.
yeah, it's weird, isn't it? But just the eeriness of some of the scenes, like this, the scene where she gets to the supermarket and it's empty, and she phones them up, and then just all the trucks turn up, and all the people just walk from out of the distance, and they're just all
The
going.
two things that blew me away about it is I love the dark humor. I love the fact that the guy who talks to her through the TV was just the highest ranking politician who happened to be wearing a suit, so they could put him on TV. And also, I love the way that Gilligan manages the slow dawning realization of what's happening in the first episode, the way it drip feeds the audience. There's that incredible one shot where she's driving through all the insanity. There's just really great filmmaking.
And I mean, the opening is very reminiscent of Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yes.
I don't know whether they're SETI people or they're at the Arecibo radio telescope
Mm.
array, and they detect a signal, and then it cuts to that great scene where there's just like 50 eggheads in this tiny little room,
Yeah.
all having different conversations.
Hunkered
But
around.
then the point where the woman gets bitten by the rat and it
Mm.
breaks the her protective gear, and then she starts fitting, and then just stops and goes really calm and kisses him, and then he starts fitting and then stops, and then
Yeah.
they just they just kind of like via osmosis know what to do next, and off they go, and then you see the scenes of them
Swabbing.
each other's mouths,
Yeah.
and sending the kits out to infect everyone. And all that stuff is really quite chilling, considering. And what's another thing that's interesting is it's incredibly brave in this day and age to do a TV show with so little dialogue,
I
with
think that
so
what's
many
great about this
silent
show
scenes in it.
is this is the type of project you can only do when you've got a showrunner who has cachet because of some big successes. He's using his success. Basically, it's like Seth MacFarlane doing the Orville. It's blank check. It's a blank check
Yeah.
syndrome, And I think that Apple TV do some fantastic science fiction. This and Severance and Foundation. Really super intelligent, rewarding patience type TV. And
I mean, what I'm finding interesting about this is usually with shows like this, you can kind of work out in what direction they're heading.
yeah.
But with this, it's difficult to see what she can do as the main
But it
character.
feels there's something about it, and this might be just because I've followed all of Vince Gilligan's other shows, which are very intentional and know where they're going and have very satisfying conclusions. There's a real sense of trust in the show. But the things that I liked about it as well, the little ideas that millions of people died just because people might have been driving, or some people just would fall over and bang their heads. And, just the idea that there'd be this massive apocalypse level of just accidents. People just
And
death through upsy.
was it 800 million people she killed when she lost her temper?
Yeah.
Something like that, you find out. And I think that's an interesting, because you suddenly realize why they're sort of giving her the concierge service and the do you need anything, Carol? Are you okay, Carol? Maybe you want to calm down a little bit.
Yeah.
You realize that, I mean, she does in one sense hold a lot of power over the hive mind, but in another sense she's completely powerless. And I think that dichotomy is interesting.
It's just such a
and
shame.
The fact that, I mean, they introduce her as a gay woman and also as a creative type who's not happy with the direction she's the kind of typical. Yeah, she basically sees herself as a sellout because she wants to do more serious literature, and she's basically known for romance novels.
Yeah.
And all that stuff is really interesting. I thought the moment where her wife collapses and she has to get her to the hospital, I thought that whole set of scenes were amazing.
Yeah, it was one of that whole 10 minutes was one of the best things I've seen in visual media this year. It just worked. It was so bravura, and it was the fact that it was a spin on. We've seen versions of that so many times. You know, we've seen Tom Cruise driving through War of the Worlds. You know, we've seen the first episode of The Last of Us in the game. You know, all good science fiction is essentially a thought experiment. It's what if, isn't it? And I think that this is a great what if.
He's definitely still got the sci-fi chops. Definitely. Yeah. I've watched the first 4. I think I've got one more to watch.
I think the 5th just dropped.
That's halfway through the season. And I just think it's been one of the smartest written. It's just nice to have a show where they're not afraid to let the silence sit.
And you know what? It's not a slog. That's the other thing. There's this thing on a lot of premium TV that for something to have value, it has to be dull. and there's a difference. You know, dull isn't the same as meditative. You know, you can be both. But anyway, got to finish up now. Quick reminder that we appreciate feedback. ginstrokerversuspenser@gmail.com, or leave comments on the YouTube channel. Check out our friend shows, including the Rewatch Project, His Film, Her Movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Odd, Talk Without Rhythm, Entertainment Landfill, and Film Bastards. But for now, that is us, and we will see you again soon. Goodbye.
Goodbye.